family affair. A recital of stories, music, and merriment, brought to you by Christopher Ludwig, flute and voice, and David Ludwig, piano and voice, father and son. It's a family affair. We'll have some time and space today for laughter. If you wondered sometimes whether we meant to be funny, I assure you that we did. You may go ahead and laugh. We'll have some time and space for beauty, beauty of sound, of phrase, of story, of community. We'll have some time for tears, hopefully the deeply joyous kind, the cleansing ones. Tonight it's a family affair. We are separated in space, and yet we are joined as one, here and now. Let us be family together in this moment, in this place. Today you might hear from some old friends, stories and songs, musical pieces that you know and love. Today you will definitely hear from some new friends, unexpected gifts from unexpected places. Either way, may it be a time to give thanks, even, perhaps especially, in these days of global pandemic and social distancing. Night has fallen. We long for the dawn.
In the morning, when the sun
Indeed, I will go singing on, and Christopher and I, we will go playing on and on. It is good to know that there are some old musical friends here tonight, along with the new, because this is the time of COVID-19, and that means a time of change. The world is turning upside down, and we all need some things to hold on to. In these strange times, the same old things are happening every day. The same old things might happen. I mean, we still go to the store, right? We still pick up our mail from the mailbox. The same things happen, but in a brand new and sometimes very complicated way. The world is not the same. I invite you to listen to a story by Bailey White. Comes from the book Sleeping at the Starlight Motel. She writes, my Aunt Eleanor was taking a shower the other day when the whole bathroom fell right through the floor and landed in the dust under the house. Dripping wet and all lathered up, picking soap and tile grout out of her ears, Aunt Eleanor crawled out of the debris through the startled doodlebugs. Actually, every good family has a story of a spectacular plumbing disaster. The finer the family, the more wonderful the story. Your great-uncle Melville, said Aunt Eleanor wistfully, came through the ceiling from a second-floor bathroom, right over the dining room table when Pamela was having her garden club luncheon. And we have sunk to this. I knew what she meant. A simple plunge from the ground floor, no guests in the house at the time. There's no denying that our family has degenerated over the years. The family fortune frittered away, the big house sold. We are probably not up to a second-floor plumbing disaster involving chandeliers and crown moldings. Are you all right? I asked Aunt Eleanor, trying to change the subject. Do you feel as if all your backbones are fused together from the impact? I feel fine, she snapped, just humiliated. Actually, I said, nowadays people are judged more by the clothes they wear, the kinds of cars they drive, and where they go on vacation. Determining social status by plumbing calamities has become obsolete. Aunt Eleanor sighed. I'm old-fashioned, I guess, she said. The plumber told her that the most houses these days are built on concrete slabs, so there's no potential for accidents like the one she had. He recommended a fiberglass tub and shower unit. You'll never have another problem, he said. I went to town and bought Eleanor a $60 linen skirt and a gold watch. She smoothed down the pleats of the skirt and strapped the watch on her arm. She thanked me, but she didn't look impressed. Concrete slab, she muttered, fiberglass. She sank into the moth-eaten down cushion on her Chippendale chair, closed her eyes and let her mind drift back over the years, to a time when our family would have been ranked #1 in the Grady County equivalent of Burke's Peerage, when the women were ladies and wore white lawn, and the men were gentlemen and smoked fine cigars. Shot right through the ceiling medallion he did, your great-uncle Melville, Aunt Eleanor said dreamily, and landed in the tomato aspic. Now there's style, there's class, there's breeding. Yes, a time of change, and probably a time when the old ways seemed much better. You know, the old times of ceiling medallions and crown moldings, of a proper second-floor crash in a proper clawfoot tub, perhaps. We're impoverished now. Have you felt it? We used to be able to gather together for our concerts in person, but now, just online. The day seems to be coming to a close, the good old day. Will the sun ever rise? What would a new day even bring?
Where has the star
That is indeed what we long for. But when shall we see it? When shall we feel it? How shall we remain connected and hopeful and whole when our world has changed so much? When we have changed so much? Another story from Bailey White. One of my dearest childhood friends has lived for the past 25 years in Paris, where she teaches English to French people. I see Alma only once a year when she comes home to visit her family for a couple of weeks. She calls me up when she gets here, and I go over to her mother's house in the afternoon, and we sit in the living room and we drink tea. Sometimes I try to talk Alma into doing some of the things I enjoy, swimming in the deep springs and sinkholes in North Florida, or just taking a long walk in the woods in the late afternoon. But Alma says that something about living in Paris for so many years has caused her to develop an irrational fear of the natural world. But it's not like we're in the wilds of Borneo, I tell her. What exactly are you afraid of? I'm thinking if I can comfort her with a few reassuring facts, she will lose her fears. Alma says, I'm afraid an insect will bite me, or I'll fall over, or be scratched by a tree. Well, Alma, I say, have another cup of tea. On other visits, Alma tries to talk me into coming to see her in Paris. She describes her fascinating cosmopolitan friends and peculiar little museums she knows about and wonderful cheeses. But I tell Alma, I just can't get up my nerve to go there. What exactly are you afraid of, she asks me. And I say, I'm afraid I will find myself abandoned in the middle of a busy intersection, and I will stand there trying to find the courage to cross the street, and the cars will whiz by in 5 or 6 directions. And their drivers will blow their horns and shout at me in a language I do not speak, and eventually I will wither up and be blown away like a piece of ash and lost in the gray shadows of a great city far from home. Alma thinks for a while. Have another cup of tea, Bailey, she says. And in the end, I don't really regret that Alma and I can't share the things we each love best. I'm just happy that we are both so civilized that we can sustain a friendship for 25 years on nothing more than cups of tea and conversation. Yes, we have changed. Yes, the world has changed, but we have not needed to grow apart. We can sustain our friendships, but wait, we can't even meet for lunch or for tea. Help. I think that's what we need. A little bit of help here.
On the tips of my fingers, I've got a boiling in the back of my brain. I've got a hunger burning inside me, cannot be denied. I've got a feeling that the Father who made us, when he was kindling the pulse in my veins, he left a tiny spark of that fire smoldering inside. The spark of creation burning bright within me. The spark of creation is blazing in my blood, a bit of the fire that lit up the stars and breathed life into the mud. The first inspiration, the spark of creation. I see a mountain and I want to climb it. I see a river and I want to leave shore. Where there is nothing, let there be something, something made by me. There's things waiting for me to invent them. There's worlds waiting for me to explore. I am an echo of the eternal cry of let there be the spark of creation burning bright within me. The spark of creation won't let me rest at all until I discover or build or uncover a thing that I can call myself. celebration of the spark of creation. The spark of creation, make it burn forever. The spark of creation, I am the keeper of the flame. We think all we want is a lifetime of leisure, each perfect day the same, endless vacation. Well, that's alright if you're a kind of crustacean, but when you're born with an imagination, sooner or later you'll fall in the fire, get hotter and higher. The spark of
Yes, we need help, and we are praying for that. We need imagination, and we are working with that. We are taking steps, little ones, haltingly. Have you seen them? Have you taken them? Have you reached out to anyone with whom you had previously lost contact? Has someone reached out to you? Little steps. It definitely takes work, and it doesn't happen overnight. You know, in my younger days when I was sitting up at night thinking, what will I be like? What will it be like in the pandemic when it comes? This is not what I was imagining. I wasn't imagining spraying my mail down with disinfectant. I wasn't imagining how long it took to go to the store and to stand 6 feet away from someone. This is not what I was imagining. There's definitely a little heavy lifting involved. Another story by Bailey White. This one from the book, Mama Makes Up Her Mind. For years, we've been trying to get Mama to write her memoirs. She actually started once. She was writing them on old envelopes with a blue ballpoint pen. She would make her grocery list on the other side of the envelope, and she kept leaving her memoirs at the checkout counter of the Piggly Wiggly. We bought Mama an electric typewriter, but the persistent hum made her nervous. I can't stop and think with that humming, she said, glaring at the machine. I feel like it's saying, type, you old fool, type. Then my sister tried to train Mama to use a word processor. But she kept mashing the wrong buttons, and she ended up with 3 pages of dollar marks in her early childhood, and a 9 everywhere there should have been a space. And her account of the birth of her younger sister, Eleanor, turned out with every letter that should have been capital small, and every letter that should have been small capital, which she said gave a false sense of importance to that event. What I really need, she said, is that old Underwood upright typewriter that used to sit under the sink. But my niece Lucy had taken that typewriter to college in Atlanta and had abandoned it when she got her first computer. So Mama had a good excuse not to write her memoirs. Then one summer, while cleaning out the attic of an old aunt in Saltville, Virginia, I found another Underwood upright typewriter. My aunt said I could have it if I could just get it down from the attic and home on the train. The typewriter is the shape and size of a sperm whale. My aunt's husband, a newspaper journalist, had wrestled it up into the attic and then died. I rigged up a series of winches and pulleys and got it down. Then I practiced different ways of carrying that typewriter. I'm very strong for my size, so the sheer weight of it wasn't the problem. But if you tilt it the wrong way, the bell will ding, and the carriage will swoop down and whack you in the knee. And I had to be fast and agile because the train barely pauses at my station in Georgia. If you're not at the door with your bags and are ready to leap off when the train begins to break, you end up the next morning in Fort Lauderdale. With the help of several gallant old-fashioned uncles and a fluttering chorus of their wives, making little shrieks and swapping yarns about hernias, I got the typewriter onto the train in Richmond. Then I was on my own. I staggered down the aisle to my assigned seat, and I plopped down beside a very alert-looking young woman. For my mother's memoirs, I gasped. The alert look changed to a kind of guarded disgust, and she clamped the headset of her portable tape player over her ears and began viciously reading a short story in her New Yorker magazine. I could barely hear the squeak of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. After a while, I began to feel the flow of blood to my feet shut off, and I realized that I was going to have to get the typewriter off my lap and onto the overhead rack. I did it in 2 heaves, one to chest height, and then up onto the rack. At one point, everything went black inside my head except for one bright light, behind which I thought I could see my dead uncle, the journalist, dressed in white robes and beckoning earnestly to me across a deep valley. When I opened my eyes, my seatmate was gone. Only her New Yorker magazine was left, the pages still rustling. Later, I heard her down the aisle arguing with the attendant about assigned seats. It was late at night when we got to Georgia. A nice man from Ludwig had moved over to sit by me. "Your mama can type?" he asked. "Oh, my mama can do anything," I said. "Yeah," he said, "my mama's like that too. But the one thing she can't do is type." He helped me get the typewriter off the train as it paused for its one instant. We keep the typewriter on the kitchen table. Mama acts like she doesn't know it's there. But sometimes, late at night, I see a light on in the kitchen, and I hear a sound like somebody is out there cracking oysters open with a rock. And then I know Mama is writing her memoirs. Mama is writing her memoirs. We have some memoirs to write too. And we'll have some stories to tell. Memoirs are important, and stories are essential. They're essential to each one of us and essential to our community together. And yet, I long for not just stories, but for that healing touch. Just this week, I spoke with a friend of mine whose wife is in the hospital and was in the hospital with a very serious, life-threatening ailment. And I asked him, "Are you able to go to visit her?" And he said, "No, of course not. The hospital is near our house, but we only talk on the phone." He cannot be at her side. He longs for that healing touch. She longs for that healing touch. We all long. We all yearn. We all wait. Locked inside our skin, we live so far apart. What I wouldn't give to feel the beating of your heart. Trapped inside close the gap. Brings tears to my eyes because of the ways that we cannot touch each other. Yet it makes me smile when I sing that because of the ways that we are reaching out and growing. I'm smiling for the doctors and nurses and hospital staff who reach out to their sick and dying patients. I'm sure you've heard the stories. Those doctors and nurses, all the staff at the hospital, who become family to those who can have no family present. When the family cannot come, those doctors and nurses who break barriers to imagine a new world that is so close, that is ready to be born, when we only have the eyes to see it. I'd like to read you a story written by Henry Nouwen from his book, Can You Drink the Cup? Henry Nouwen was a Catholic priest who worked with many people for many years with developmental disabilities. A writer and a world traveler, he lived in a home with people with physical and developmental disabilities. This is the story of his visit to Trevor. Trevor in the Golden Room. Henry Nouwen writes, I have a very lively memory connected with the cup of sorrow and joy becoming the cup of blessings. A few years ago, one of the handicapped members of the Daybreak community, where I live, had to spend a few months in a mental hospital near Toronto for psychological evaluation. His name is Trevor. Trevor and I had become close friends over the years. Trevor loved me and I loved him. Whenever he saw me coming, Trevor ran up to me with a great radiant smile. Often he went into the fields and collected wildflowers for me. He always wanted to assist me in the celebrations of the Eucharist, and he had a fine sense for ceremony and ritual. During the time that Trevor was away from Daybreak, I decided to go see him at the hospital. I called the hospital chaplain and asked him if I could visit my friend. The chaplain said I was welcome to come and wondered if it would be all right if he invited some of the ministers and priests in the area and some members of the hospital staff to have lunch with me. Without thinking much about the implications, I said immediately, sure, that will be fine. When I arrived at 11 a.m., a large group of clergy and hospital personnel was waiting for me, and they welcomed me warmly. I looked around for Trevor, but Trevor wasn't there. So I said, I came here to visit Trevor. Can you tell me where I can find him? And the hospital chaplain said, you can be with him after lunch. Well, I was stunned, and I said, but didn't you invite Trevor for lunch? Oh, no, he said, that's impossible. Staff and patients, they cannot have lunch together. Moreover, we have reserved the Golden Room for this occasion, and no patient has ever been allowed in the Golden Room. It is for staff only. Well, I said, I will only have lunch with you all when Trevor can be there too. Trevor and I are close friends. It's for Trevor that I came, and I'm sure he would love to join us for lunch. I noticed some mixed reaction to my words, but after some whispering, I was told that I could bring Trevor with me to the Golden Room. I found Trevor on the hospital grounds, as always, looking for flowers, and when he saw me, his face lit up, and he ran to me as if we had never been apart, and he said, Henry, here are some flowers just for you. Together we went to the Golden Room. The table was beautifully set, and about 25 people had gathered around it. Trevor and I were the last to sit down. After the opening prayer, Trevor walked to the side table where there were different drinks. He said, Henry, I want a Coke. I poured him a Coke, and I took a glass of wine for myself, and we returned to the table. People were making small talk. Many of the guests were strangers trying to get to know each other. The general atmosphere was quiet, somewhat solemn. I got quickly involved in a conversation with my right-hand neighbor, and I didn't pay much attention to Trevor. But suddenly, Trevor stood up, took his glass of Coke, lifted it in the air, and said with a loud voice and a big smile, ladies and gentlemen, a toast. Well, everyone dropped their conversation and turned to Trevor with puzzled and somewhat anxious faces. I could read their thoughts. What in the heck is this patient going to do? Better be careful. But Trevor, he had a different idea. He had no worries. He looked at everybody and he said, "Lift your glasses." And everyone obeyed. And then, as if it were the most obvious thing to do, Trevor started to sing. "When you're happy and you know it, lift your glass. When you're happy and you know it, lift your glass. When you're happy and you know it, when you're happy and you know it, when you're happy and you know it, lift your glass." And as Trevor sang, people's faces relaxed and they started to smile. And soon a few joined Trevor in his song, and not long after, everyone was standing, singing with Trevor under Trevor's direction. Trevor's toast radically changed the mood in the Golden Room. He had brought these strangers together, and he had made them feel at home. His beautiful smile and his fearless joy had broken down the barriers between staff and patients and created a happy family of caring people. With his unique blessing, Trevor had set the tone for a joyful and fruitful meeting. The cup of sorrow had become the cup of blessings. A little singing. A little singing when someone imagines a new and different world and takes some very simple steps, halting steps, to bring that world to life. So simple, yet we couldn't imagine it all those years before. We wouldn't imagine it, maybe. A patient reaching out to a doctor and a doctor reaching back, clasping hands. A simple act. The gift of imagination and the will to bring it to life. What are we to do when the answers are all gone and when the darkness of night seems inescapable? When the end is so certainly near? Listen to a story by musician Ken Miedema. Ken writes, "A little village was stretched out along a narrow strip of beach between the ocean and the great, inescapable, unscalable mountains. One morning, the chief of the village rose early, and he looked out across the ocean, and he saw something that made his flesh grow cold. He immediately called all the wise persons of the village together. 'Look out across the ocean,' he said, 'and tell me what you see.' And they all said, 'We see the great dragon who breathes fire and fills the air with smoke and threatens all that we are with total destruction.' 'Look behind you,' said the chief, 'and tell me what you see.' And they all said, 'We see the great unscalable mountains, too dangerous for anyone to climb.' 'What shall we do?' said the chief. 'We don't know,' said the wise persons. So the chief called his daughters. There were 3. To the eldest daughter he said, 'Look out across the ocean and tell me what you see.' She said, 'Papa, I see the great dragon who breathes fire and fills the air with smoke and threatens all we are with destruction.' 'Look behind you and tell me what you see,' said the chief. 'Oh, Papa,' she answered, 'I see the great unscalable mountain, too dangerous for anyone to climb.' 'What shall we do?' said the chief. The eldest daughter replied, 'I think we shall die.' 'Not a good answer,' replied the chief, and he called his middle daughter. 'Tell me what you see as you look out to the ocean,' he said. 'Papa, I see the great dragon who breathes fire.' 'Look behind you and tell me what you see.' 'Oh, Papa,' was the answer, 'I see the great unscalable mountains, too dangerous to climb.' 'What shall we do?' said the chief. 'Papa, I think we shall go swimming, but I know we shall not last long.' 'Not a good answer,' said the chief. So he called his youngest daughter to him. 'Look, daughter, look out across the ocean and tell me what you see.' 'Papa,' she said, 'I see the great dragon who breathes fire and fills the air with smoke and threatens all we are with destruction.' 'And what do you see behind you?' asked the chief. 'Oh, Papa, I see the great unscalable mountains, too dangerous for anyone to climb.' 'What shall we do?' said the chief. 'Why, Papa, we'll call out the musicians and we'll dance.' 'What?' said the chief. 'What?' 'Sure,' she said. 'Perhaps the old dragon will be so confused by our music and dancing, he'll forget where he is and he'll go fly off somewhere else. Or maybe he'll be enchanted with our dancing, and maybe, just maybe, he will come and dance with us, in which case he is tamed. But if none of these things happens, and Papa, if we must die, wouldn't it be better to die dancing?'" And so what do you say? I say, let's have some music for a dance. Let's make it a habanera. We began our recital together with an old friend, a hymn familiar to many of us. I don't know if you recognized it. It's known variously as How Brightly Shines the Morning Star. Chris and I played it in an instrumental version by Michael Burkhart. In some translations, it's How Lovely Shines the Morning Star, or maybe O Morning Star, How Fair and Bright, depending upon your translation from the German. There's so many translations because it's such a beloved hymn. An odd choice for a recital beginning, perhaps. Yet I think we can bring it all home today with the story of this hymn. You see, this hymn, known as the Queen of all chorales, and a favorite of J.S. Bach, it was written in 1597 and 98 by Philip Nicolai, a German pastor. This was a time of religious wars in Europe. In the early part of his pastorate, several times Nicolai had to flee or go into hiding to minister to his congregations. They couldn't meet together in a large public group in the open. Does this sound familiar? Later, when he was a pastor in Westphalia, the plague spreading through Europe killed 1,300 of his town's inhabitants, mostly in the latter half of 1597. 170 died in 1 week alone. 2 of Nicolai's sisters died, and on at least one day, the townspeople dug 30 graves. You can imagine Nicolai looking out from the church windows to the graveyard each day. While every household was in mourning, what did Philip do? He wrote these words: "Come, precious diamond, light divine, and deep within our hearts now shine, their light of flame undying. In your one body let us be, as living branches of a tree, your life our lives supply. Now, though daily earth's deep sadness may perplex us and distress us, yet with heavenly joy you bless us." Imagine Nicolai looking out at the graves being dug and writing these words for his congregation to sing. Imagine Nicolai looking out at his congregation singing these words together, even as they're digging graves to bury their loved ones. Think of his congregation singing these words and maybe dancing them in their hearts, as Chris and I paint the text in another setting by Michael Burkhart. His toccata from O Morning Star, How Fair and Bright. Christopher's going to come stand behind me because there's too many pages for him to turn. change. It is a time of sorrow. It is a time of hope. What shall we do? Chris and I say, let us dance. Let us sing. Let us play. Let us smile. Let us imagine the possibilities. And everything we do, let us do it together. And we will get there through this storm and beyond. Peace to you all. Peace to us all.